Now, smoking cigarettes is certainly less popular than it was. It's certainly more expensive too. The government wants us to move to become a smoke-free England, virtually smoke-free, by 2030, whilst Sir Charles Walker, Conservative MP for Broxbourne and Vice Chair of the 1922 Committee, is leading a debate in Parliament this afternoon on this issue, and I'm delighted he joins me now. Charles, your first time on the channel, you're very welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So it's virtually smoke-free by 2030. How are we going to get there?
I don't think we are. So when we talk about a smoke-free England, that means less than 5% of the population smoking. And we're currently at about 14%. And there is a strong view that actually the numbers have gone up as a result of lockdown. So we might be northwards of 15% at the moment. And the cancer charities now reckon that it could be 2037 at the best before we get to that 5% figure. And even that's looking like a reach at the moment.
Well, that suggests that some people just like smoking cigarettes and perhaps they shouldn't be hectored for doing so. That's what some people would say. How do you respond?
So, look, I'm a reformed smoker, and
Me too.
I love smoke. I don't smoke anymore. I gave up 17 years ago. But the fact is that lots of people want to give up, but it is difficult to give up, and they've tried vaping. But there are other things. There's non-lit tobacco. There's snoo. There's all sorts of other tobacco products out there, nicotine products. But the government just won't entertain beyond vaping, allowing people to access them. Now, in Sweden, for example, where smoking rates are now deemed to be down to 7%, there's a much wider range of nicotine products available. And so I don't want to hector people, but let's face it, nicotine is highly addictive. Going cold turkey is very difficult. So if we're serious about reducing harm, then we should allow people access to other nicotine products that are less harmful than smoking cigarettes.
And are you suggesting that they should be available for free on the NHS?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I think people should pay for them, although in some cases I think there is talk about prescribing vaping for really hardcore smokers who are finding it very difficult. The government's got to be really imaginative about this. Gloria, 75,000 people die from smoking-related illnesses every year. So over a 10-year period, that's the population of Birmingham, 750,000 people dying every 10 years. About 500,000 hospital admissions every year are related to smoking. So if the government is serious about driving down smoking-related illnesses, smoking deaths, then it should be more imaginative in its approach. There's also a levelling up issue here. If you live in the northwest, say in a seaside town, a big seaside town in the northwest, in one of the most deprived boroughs, smoking rates are still above 22%. If you live in leafy Surrey, smoking rates are below 5%. And the discrepancy in mortality, the age of mortality for men is 8 years. So if you live in one of these deprived areas in the northwest where smoking prevalence is 4 times higher than, say, in Surrey, the average male life expectancy is 8 years less. And that's not acceptable, is it?
No, indeed. And I think everybody would agree with that, although some would say, but if I choose to smoke, I know the risks. But
I'm not, if people want to smoke, that's fine, but let's give people the chance to quit. I don't believe in the nanny state. I believe in the state actually reducing smoking seriously and providing a wider range of alternatives for people to consume, but alternatives that would do them less harm over the course of the consumption of those materials.
Yeah, OK, very clear. Now, we both mentioned that we're both former smokers. I vape, I'll put that on record, but I do notice people can be quite sniffy about it. For example, if I'm in a pub or restaurant, I have to stand outside with people smoking cigarettes, which sort of defeats the point about stopping smoking cigarettes because, you know, I would be blowing out air. Do you get that we're a bit unkind as a society to people who are trying to, you know, I mean, I would have struggled to stop smoking cigarettes without vaping.
I mean, vaping is much less harmful. The impact on third parties is much reduced. But we do have this sort of mental block around nicotine in this country. We really do, that all nicotine is bad. Now, nicotine's not great for you, but smoking nicotine is the worst thing for you, and it's the worst thing for people around you. Actually, vaping reduces your risk greatly, eliminates almost the risk to anybody else, and so does non-combustible tobacco, and so does snoo, and in the same way nicotine gum does, although obviously we don't like that being on pavement.
Indeed. While we have you, Charles, I'm sure you understand we need to ask you about today's news that 20 fixed penalty notices will be issued. The Partygate furore, which threatened the Prime Minister's future earlier this year, seems to have faded. In your view, could it return?
I think it could return, but not at the same frenetic pace as sort of 4 to 5 weeks ago, purely because the world's attention, this country's attention, has turned to the terrible events in Ukraine that don't just risk Ukrainians' independence and obviously the terrible events that are taking lives over there, but have wider ramifications for NATO, EU, and dare I say, the world.
And very, very finally and briefly, the Prime Minister told Parliament all guidance was followed completely in number 10. The opposition parties are saying, well, it turns out not to be true. The fines that are going to be issued prove that. That's a problem, isn't it?
I think everybody has to take personal responsibility. The Prime Minister has to take personal responsibility for his actions, and all those people fined have to take personal responsibility for their actions. Gloria, you know I voted against all of this, and I would do it all again. There was a different way of doing this. We chose not to do it. Those who were the strongest cheerleaders for lockdown had the greatest obligation, in my view, to follow it, because they were subjecting all of us to lockdown, regardless of the consequences on people's mental and physical health, which was the mental health certainly was never factored into the cost of lockdown. So, look, I'm moderately unsympathetic. If those people who were driving lockdowns the hardest didn't follow the lockdowns, then that leaves me somewhat irritated. But that's their own lookout. They're going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to justify their actions, and they're going to be accountable for their actions.
Charles Walker, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you.